Because this was a special cabinet, so unfortunately the other room was already booked. So that's why I'm a bit cramped, so I do apologise for those of you who haven't actually been able to get a seat. So we'll start off first of all with apologies for absence. We've had apologies from Steve Charnley. Item 2 on the agenda is disclosable pecuniary interest. Has any member got any pecuniary interest they wish to disclose? No, thank you. Item 3, we've got public question time. There's nobody's actually able to speak. Item 4, matters referred from council. No. So item 5 is the revenue monitoring 215 to 16 quarter 3, which is before you. I have to say it is concerning to see the growth again in elderly care costings. It's never a growing problem. I think we've all actually got to take in, and the council as a whole and the government, I think, has to acknowledge the problems that we've got in that area. I think it's not only us, but I think all rural counties are actually suffering from the same problem. Does anybody want to speak to the revenue monitoring report? Roger.
Thank you, Chairman. An interesting, challenging report. Quite a number of items in it I could pick out to actually talk, but I think of most concern is under 5.3, when it says management have provided assurances that plans are in place to deliver savings that have not been categorised as amber. However, as evidence of the delivery has not yet been identified, there is a risk that these could still cause pressure. Pressure on the budget already, overspend being predicted, and if one looks at that, there is another 3.8 million in amber savings, which according to that, plans are in place but no evidence yet. So I would ask, and it'll be up to each individual scrutiny committee, but the items there for the individual scrutiny committees, I think urgently they could do with looking at each of these areas, maybe putting a report to the task and finish group that was formed, whatever, but there are a number of areas in there which give me a lot of concern, and I would think other members of council some concern of the variances that are there, and we are now into February with plans not in place to deliver in quarter 4. So I'm not sure whether we're going to meet the budget predictions at present at the end of the year or not. I could say more, Chairman, but your thoughts.
There's quite obviously a gap there, which we will be funding. Correct me if I'm wrong, James. We are funding in the 16-17 budget by one-offs, which will get us over the problems this year. Next year's budget, the year after, which is the difficult one for us, and there are very unpalatable decisions that we've had to indicate in the second year of the plan, which really none of us would like to implement, but we do have to wait until the actual settlement. I know it's a 4-year settlement, but we're hopeful that we'll get some more news from government for that year. So I see the year after is a moving feast until we've got the full information of it.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I understand those points, but this is for 15-16, lessons that we can learn and take forward into next year and the following years. There are a number of statements made in the report. Public health, there is a large amount of money there which is going to be used to fund other services within the council to do with health. I'd like to know what they are. I'd like to receive reassurances. This is on page 7. The last sentence on page 7, this delay reduces the amount of redevelopment funding for IT. What does that in fact mean? One can go through it even more. And if you look at page 8, there's a report there. These resources have been ring-fenced to assist with balancing the 16-17 budget. and therefore will be contributable to a new earmarked reserve during 15-16. Is there going to be any reserve there? Because if the Amber savings are not made, and I think it could do with being looked at, there's no plans in place, there's no reassuring plans in place to do it. I think scrutiny needs to look at those to see where we are and what lessons and what we can do to help in future years.
Roger, I understand what you're saying, and clearly officers who are managing services and directors who are managing services have plans that they think are reliable and are robust, but our 151 officer and our finance staff can't actually factor them into a plan until there's evidence, and that's what we're talking about. So it's not as though we don't have plans, they're just not sufficiently evidenced as we stand for James to include them and factor them into the budget this year. You are right though, if those savings are made, then it will have an impact on reserves, and we will have to find the savings in other ways or fill the gaps. So I agree with you, you are right, but as we stand, we have plans, albeit that they are not yet processed through finance. There is sufficient satisfaction that they're robust.
Alan, do you want to speak?
I mean, clearly what's in this report spills over into what's going to be said and looked at in the financial report, but it does seem to me that the adult services budget is out of control in some respects, and it has been for a number of years, and we've seen overspends of £4, £5, £7 million in the last few years, and we've seen a massive one that's only just been discovered in this report. Now, I don't know why this is happening. I don't know why every year we have the same conversation. We obviously have some predictors about the age that people live to. We have some predictors about the likely consequences of ill health in certain ages. We know how many people are in the county. We know how many people are our age, and therefore there ought to be some. And on page 3, there's a 4.2.2. There's a list of reasons why there's this growth. And now I would have thought that many of those are predicted. Why haven't they been predicted? How are we so far out? How is it that 3 weeks ago at Cabinet we had a particular financial review, and now we've got something that's so different? What is going wrong? And I would ask you, Malcolm, do you believe that we've got a crisis in adult care? Do you also believe that all this builds up to an atmosphere, to a perception that we've got a crisis waiting to happen, disaster waiting to happen in terms of our responsibilities to our residents? Where can you see the turning point in this? And don't you think, and this is something that Roger's mentioned, it isn't time that we had a rigorous, very rigorous scrutiny across the authority, and that we have brought in external experts and professionals in the field of finance and adult care to advise that scrutiny. It almost feels as though an independent inquiry is necessary, but I'm not going to that extent. But I would ask you to consider that a rigorous special scrutiny be established with external expert advice, because it really does seem like a disaster waiting to happen across the piece here.
I don't think it's just a Shropshire. I think you're right, it is a critical problem, but I don't think it's just Shropshire. The first question I've asked is this a Shropshire-wide problem, or is it a national trend? And the information I've had back so far, that most of it tends to be a national trend for all the reasons that are actually given in the report. I think it's not only us, but I think it's central government generally has got to understand the extent to which people are living much longer, and because they're getting older and older, that means there's more demand on social care for them. I think the government have got to actually acknowledge this for all of local government. I don't see this as just a Shropshire problem. I think this is a national problem that's got to be solved nationally. Of course, we're doing what we can. We think actually that there will be a place where it might level off. But I can remember going back the last 30 years that we've overspent the elderly care budget every year. In fact, one of my arguments in the past has been, are we budgeting correctly? And I'm not just talking about this administration, I'm talking about the Labour Liberal administration, the ones before that. Do we budget correctly when every year we have an overspend in elderly care services? But every year, since I can remember, that has happened. It's just the growth, and I think it must be obvious to everybody sitting around this table why that is. But I'll let Clive answer about having consultancies. We have had the local government associations look at several aspects of what we're doing as a second opinion, that we're actually doing it right. We're doing it with education funding and other things like that.
Yes, thank you, Leader. I think it's very helpful actually if we got the LGA to have a look at adult social care, not necessarily as a peer review. We've had one of those and we came out very well. And I'm sure elected members will be aware that our costs compared to other authorities per head of population compare very well. So we are at the front of the leaders in the pack, as it were. Nevertheless, so I think I'd welcome the LGA being involved in much the same way as they are involved in looking at finance and looking at other parts of the council, including children's services. That would be really helpful. And so we can set that up if the portfolio holder is in agreement with that. In terms of the predictions, we do predict every year. It's a very technical calculation and it is based on everything that you suggest, the demographics, what we know about people and their needs. And every year as it moves on, it's the model for predicting that changes, because if you look back, there's no reason to disprove what we predicted, but yet more people come in. This is a phenomenon that's happening not just to adult social care, it's happening across Shropshire. Malcolm asked me to go and find out, is this just Shropshire, is it just the council it's happening to? But this is also happening in the CCG in terms of continuing healthcare, where they bust their budgets and are now projecting similar increases to us that can't be easily explained by the predictions, but they know that the volume coming through the door has gone up. Similarly, if you look in the acute trust in the number of older people presenting at A&E or otherwise coming in for treatment, then the numbers have increased and the complexity of their treatment has increased. The good news is that people are living longer. The difficulty is that they're living longer with more complex care needs, and that's what's costing the money essentially. Malcolm's also asked us to look at wider than Shropshire, and so we've looked throughout the region. And this is it a trend, is it a blip, but whichever it is, a trend being it's a long-term prognosis of additional costs and additional care being needed. A blip might mean that it could level out. This winter has been quite warm in comparison. It's usually cold winters that cause the issue, but nevertheless these costs are high in adult social care and in continuing health care right across the region. And the curve has increased in its steepness, meaning it's gone way over and above the projections in most cases right across the West Midlands. So that's the situation that we're in. And you're right, it appears to be out of control, but no more or no less out of control than in other places. And in terms of cost per head, our control on that in Shropshire is as good as any other authority in the UK.
I think it's worth saying as well, Alan, that one of the Shropshire problems is, in rough terms, Shropshire gets about 35 pence per head of population for elderly care. The London boroughs get 66 pence and the metropolitan authorities get 65 pence per head. I think that in itself shows some problems with the actual distribution formula that central government impose upon Shropshire. And I have to think you have to look no further than National Health. We're all reading every day about A&Es and hospitals throughout the country being, having difficulty in actually coping with the amount of people that are coming through there. And of course that reflects in people at the other end of the system, which are coming into our care. Somebody breaks a hip, it goes through the NHS system, and it lands on our door for the care that person actually needs. And the amount that's increasing is also a big contributing factor. Maybe we start looking now, which is something I've asked the Chief Executive to look at, is actually investing in more preventative measures like falls and things like that, because I believe in Herefordshire, I think it is, that they've saved about £2 million off their elderly care budget, which they attribute to having preventative measures for falls, for old people falling and injuring themselves. So we've got to look at all those issues. So you can be assured that as far as the Shropshire administration is concerned, we're as concerned as you about the growth in elderly care and what we can do to mitigate that and help to make sure we continue delivering the best service we possibly can. It's exactly what we'll be doing. And I thank you for your suggestion, Alan, about bringing the LGA in to have a look. We've done it in other areas. I think that's a sensible way of proceedings. In Madras next.
Yeah. I only want to very briefly say that I went to a conference which was across the country, Rural Health, specifically about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and it was interesting that right across the country, and we've got representatives from right down south to up north, etc., etc. We had a very interesting presentation on the use of technology, which would come into the home as opposed to into the acute sector. And I'm talking primarily now about community sector here. The problem we have, of course, in Shropshire is that our broadband isn't sufficiently robust to allow us to do that in a large-scale thing, which would be a considerable saving. A saving on the patient actually going to either RSH or Royal Shrewsbury or the Princess Royal, where it could be done in their own home. It'd be a saving on transport costs and the whole ripple effect from that. So I'm just saying that there's a lot of technology out there which we can look at, which may well be able to be delivered in some parts of Shropshire. Consultants, I'm sorry, I'm a total cynic about consultants. I'd want to know who they were, what their reputation is, what their track record is, or are we just going to have people come in and tell us what the problems are, which we already know, but without any solutions? So I have grave reservations about paying out more money for consultants to come in and tell us what we already know, if they haven't got a solution for us. And as I see it, and as I belong to one of the older generation, if I can say that, yes, we do live longer. Not all of us would necessarily wish to live with all the complexities that we have, which are always insisted that we should be resuscitated and treated. Whatever our complaint might be, we will be regenerated. Actually, it's a load of nonsense, and the sooner we get off that, the better. Thank you. Well, let's say it as it is, for heaven's sake. Well, I'm not and I see just in my own area, my area covers 8 very rural parishes. I have considerable contacts across the border in Worcestershire. They're no better off than we are. All I'm saying to you is that I see some of the treatment that's given, which costs us, and we have input into this as well. I see some of that treatment as being totally unnecessary, and a peer group that I converse with sort of say, well, there is a point I will reach where I will receive no more treatment, thank you very much. Keep me free for pain, and that's all I'm asking. And we need to think about that. I think this blip in elderly will not last forever, because I think the 80, 90 and 100s will be decreasing by natural loss, if I can phrase it like that. And I can see the sort of 60, 70-year-olds, they won't last out like us old ones, that's for sure. So, Chairman, whilst I agree we have to keep where we are, all I'm saying to you is that, yes, of course we've got an answer because we have a problem now, but I would hesitate to go over the top by employing consultants who will be very costly. Even the LGA will be costly, and I would want to know who's examining us and who examines them. And I'm sorry, but I am not wholly in favour of consultants
Madge, the LGA, they've had no charges to do it.
Okay.
They didn't charge before. There's an immense expertise in the LGA on these kinds of matters. They're really free of charge in several areas that we're having second opinions on, which I think is right. So I don't think you need to really worry too much on that score. Okay, Lee, you were next.
Thank you, Malcolm. Yes, thank you, Malcolm. I just wanted to say a few words, if I may. Several of the points that I would want to have made sure have already been said. But I would like to reassure Alan that in adult social care we have a very good track record of delivering on savings. You'll be aware, no doubt, that over the last 3 years we delivered £77 million worth of savings. And whilst throughout that time demonstrating across all of the West Midlands that our system in adult social care is the most effective for delivery against use of resources of any adult social care department across any of the West Midlands authorities, and at the same time delivering a quality when assessed independently by the Care Quality Commission as being the highest in England. So I think we need to bear that in mind when we're talking about our spending being out of control. I'm sure you would expect me to say, but I will, and that is that our spend, and we spend that in support of vulnerable people, is not discretionary. And so the nature, and we have referred to how the nature of that spending is composed, very clearly, very significant portions of that arising out of hospital activity and discharge from hospital. But it isn't something that we have as much control over as we would wish, and certainly I would agree with you. I think that we could certainly be considerably smarter about predicting what that is looking like. However, whilst we are being shown a model that would demonstrate that demand is potentially rising exponentially, I have to caution against that theoretically not being possible. We have 300,000 residents across Shropshire. We should know how old they are and what their likely needs are and when those needs are likely to come in. And so I think that we need to put some resources around being much smarter about predicting demand. And I'm very happy to work with Scrutiny. We will have a close relationship with Adult Social Care Scrutiny, and Madge is the Vice Chairman of that Scrutiny Committee. And I'm very happy to contribute, as would my officers be, to a closer look by the Financial Strategy Task and Finish group, chaired very ably, Roger, by one from your group, one of the councillors from your group. I would be prepared to support some external review from the LGA. I do think that as an organisation we are always interested in looking what others can provide in terms of context and external review, but I would caution against us finding significant savings in the way that we do business, in terms of the way that we operate. I think the opportunities for us to influence behaviour are around championing leadership around the wider health and social care economy, and I think that's where we need to be looking. It's around an all-encompassing preventative agenda going right the way through from primary care right the way through to discharge from hospital, and that's where we need to be having those discussions. But, yeah, thank you.
Roger.
Thank you, Chairman. Adult social care is the biggest, as is highlighted on page 5. But also, I don't think we can lose sight of, in those red noted savings, projected savings for 2015-16, 3.8 million of them are outside of adult social care, are in other services. So of the red savings, there's 39% of it is in children's, commissioning, public health resources and corporate. So it isn't all adult social. It's the biggest monetary value, but there are others there. And the officers are doing an excellent job of managing the budget, but it's Cabinet that sets the policy, and it's the policies, I would have thought, that needs to be in place to deliver savings. If that is there, those red savings are not being delivered. They are being delivered by one-off savings, which then put more of a problem on next year and the following year. It needs to be looked at to see how it's going to be done. Adults social care in the last week, fortnight, caused a great change in this year's projected balances, £500,000 difference in 8 days. Yeah, okay, but there are other red savings there, and also the Ambers, and I think it's bigger than just the adult social care. There are other savings that may not well be achieved, and we need to know why.
I think just because the cabinet priorities are first was financial, because we've got to make sure we've got the money there to deliver anything. Now, second priority, as far as the cabinet was concerned, it's just cabinet responsibilities, was to protect vulnerable people, and that's our main priority. But it doesn't mean to say in protecting vulnerable people and services to the elderly and children, it doesn't mean to say that we shouldn't be looking at efficiencies in those areas. And of course we shall continue to look for efficiencies in those areas. And I think common sense actually states that if we've got to make the kind of savings that none of us want to make, I have to add, the chances are that the majority or a large portion are going to be outside that which we've deemed to be a priority, which is vulnerable people. So I would say it's quite normal that you'd see a lot of other savings across the piece from other areas. We're hoping that we should be having some interesting debates on the 16-17 budget, of course, which I've already told you, as far as I'm concerned, that you can be involved in. I'm hoping that by the time we get to this time next year, that we should have had a different view of what we can maybe expecting from government. I don't know, but what we can live in hope that, and I think the government does realise the problems that we're facing. As you know, I spoke to Greg Clark at length last week, and he actually he came out with it about Shropshire having special difficulties with elderly care because of the rural nature of the county. Then he fully understood that, and I think it's a big mark that we've actually got James is going to sit on the governmental panel that is going to consider new ways so they can indicate need a lot more than what the government said that we should need to arrive at a fair settlement in the formula. And I'm hoping that will start running through when in the 17-18. So I'm hoping that by this time next year that we'll be a little bit happier, not entirely happy I'm sure, but a little bit happier with the kind of draconian cuts we've had to put in the budget at the moment, because that is the situation. We have to set a legal budget, we have to tell people the implications of that legal budget, but that does give us a whole year now to talk to government, talk to ministers, and see if we can mitigate a lot of those cuts. And I would hope, and I've offered before, that the opposition group leaders would be involved in that process. So.
Happy to. I think we've both already said that.
Okay, Alan?
I did offer my services in meeting with ministers on all political parties in the past, and hope that will be forthcoming. And I know that Roger, who just confirmed, would also do so. But I think we have to face facts that all authorities are moaning about that they're being badly treated. I see that imbecile that represents Catherine Larikin in Parliament is complaining that they're being badly treated in the settlement. And if you look at various work being done by very urban authorities, they're also saying the same, that has been the case throughout the development of the coalition and now the Tory only. So the fact of the matter is that we can't go around hoping that that's going to happen, although we'll support it. And the fact of the matter is that although you purport to have found an extra 8.5 million from the government over the next 2 years, that has been swept aside in terms of mitigating any cuts in the future budget because of this awful situation with adult care. I'm just looking at page 3, where you indicate that the projected increase, the forecast for increase in adult social care was something like 7 million. It's about a tenth of the budget, is something like that. increasing by 10%. But the actual increase in spending is going to be 14. So you've only accommodated half the growth that is going to happen in adult social care. Now that can't be right, can it? There must be something going wrong in our predictors, in the models that we're using, and in the forecasting that we're relying on. There's a bit of a Fred Carnot in that respect, isn't it?
Well, but really, to conclude this part of the debate, I'm going to ask James if he can just enlighten us exactly on how we're dealing with that position.
Just to pick up on a couple of points that both Roger and Aaron have made. Yes, there are a significant number of red savings in areas outside of adult social care, but the thing we need to keep in mind is the adult social care budget is a very large budget and is very volatile, so the impact of the changes in adults are felt far more keenly than within some of the other service areas. So an unachievable saving in relation to property, for example, within resource and support or corporate, is as a result of a decision that's specifically been taken, and a lot of decisions were taken over the last couple of years, which have impacted directly on those savings. In terms of adult services, it's different. And just to pick up on the point that Alan was raising about adult social care. We have been looking and reviewing the whole adult social care model over the last 12 months. We had obviously a complete redesign of adult services. We went back to base principles, zero-based budget principles, to try and identify what the new operating model in adult social care would mean. And as a result of that, we had to make a series of estimations, and as a result of that, the 16-17 budget assumed that £7 million would be added into adult services, and there would be no requirement to make additional savings over and above the ones that were already built in and had been delayed from this current year. Now, what we've then done is we've looked back over 12 months of, 18 months of data, in fact, and what we were seeing was the additional cost that was being added, we had modelled, was around about £104,000 a month, was additional cost added through. What we're seeing is that cost has gone up from 104 to 126. And that's a combination of various different things in relation to more people presenting, more complex needs, but just from a purely financial point of view, that's a difference per month of 104 to 126. On the one hand, that's a 20% increase, so therefore it's significant. On the other hand, within a £50 million budget, we're seeing variance of £20,000 in one particular month. Now, this is an average. We could look over 12 months, and that figure is going up and down £50,000 one month to the next. So to try and find within that a trend, and to average that out to £20,000, and then that £20,000, if it hits in April, makes a significant difference to next year and this year than if it hits in March. £20,000 variance in March is actually 12 times that in the following year. So what I'm trying to say is very small, in a sense, very small variances within elements of tolerance, when multiplied up, make a significant difference. So we had already allowed for £7 million worth of growth and no savings, and that was based on £104,000 additional costs being added in every single month. For that to grow by £20,000 in a month does make that difference that you talked about in terms of the figure then being 14 million. Now, is this the end of it? Do we believe that this is the right figure? It could change again. It could be higher or lower, depending on that. We're not going for worst case, but we do believe that we are closer to worst case than best case, and it's better to flag that up at this point in time. But with more data, every month that goes by, there is more and better data, and that allows us to inform the position as we go forward each month and each quarter. But it is something that we need to keep a very close eye on.
Okay, well, we've got a recommendation before us, A and B. Will somebody move? Seconded? All those in favour, please show. Anybody against? That's carried. We now move on to the financial strategy. I think we've moved on to this paper considerably in the last paper, so can I ask members not to repeat things I've already said in the revenue monitoring report. So it is before you. It's a sad story. I think we'd all agree with that. It's trying to cope the best we can with the severe financial problems that we have. I think we've been open and honest with the public and everybody else of the consequences of the of the budgetary settlements that we've got, so which is supposed to be over the next 4 years. I'll say there is some hope, and I'm only saying it as a hope, that situation may change in the settlement changes next year, but we'll have to wait on that. And I will say that, offer again, I do hope that the opposition group leaders will take a part in looking at any alterations that we actually are able to make for the 17-18 budget. Thank you.
I accept absolutely what you say, and I look at the figures and to be perfectly honest, I'm not really quite sure where we can go. However, and I'm looking at page 21 here, and I'm looking at highways maintenance, and I see that we were unsuccessful in a bid that we made last year for some extra funding. Are we trying again this year, or has that particular pot vanished, which they so often do, don't they? As I look around my minor roads, and I'm not talking about the A, B or major routes, I'm talking about the sort of the very small capillary blood vessels that feed the rural areas. There are some, well, I think it's to do with drainage, which I'm always banging on about. Can we have some more drainage things dealt with properly, not just patched up? I've got one on Major Road there, which and it's purely because the underground culvert is blocked, but it's a major thing, and heaven knows when it'll get into the route. So I'm looking at the procedure for the more minor roads when it comes to any, what I call major interruptions, where the road's going to be closed, there's going to be a big diversion, and everybody's going to whinge and moan about it, but nevertheless, once it's done, it's well worth doing. Because the touching every week, sometimes 2 or 3 times a week, is not a good thing. So I'm just asking, is the system that was put in place for highways maintenance, do you believe that this is a robust and efficient system? And I'm questioning
Well, I'm
it.
going to ask the portfolio holder who's going to assure you, no doubt, that
I'm
that is
sure he
correct.
is.
Thank you. First, the question, your first question with regards to the bid. We were unsuccessful on the first tranche, but we are looking at putting in further bid at when the second tranche of applications are asked for. So we will be bidding for that. Now, with regards to the conditions and maintenance of minor roads, with the new asset management that we're doing, this will mean that instead of doing sort of lots of little patchings and things on roads, we will actually be looking after our assets more, more robustly. And when a road requires major work on it, that will be the priority. The works, the sort of major works, rather than little patchings and sort of redressings. It'll actually be the major works which will come to the fore.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just quickly come back on that? I hear what you say, and that's lovely. What I'm talking about is, okay, we flag up locally that there's a problem. And as I say, usually it's a problem with drainage which causes the road surface to break up, etc., etc. And it's the length of time from the recognition that there's a problem there to when it gets into the system. And I'm asking you whether the process is robust.
That really is a highways issue, not a financial. We're discussing.
Well, yes, but it is, because the funding...
Well, I'll ask Simon to quickly respond again.
All right, Chairman, that's fine.
I think what we'll do, Madge, is I'll talk to you outside. Okay. We'll discuss it more outside.
Won't make any difference to that.
Okay, Roger.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, happy to join in, because I think it would be useful to have a more insight into the budget and what is happening. I welcome your comments on page 19, which is about the capital programme. I highlighted at the last meeting about the lack of vision, the lack of investor save in it, and I see under 9.1 you say that it will be considered throughout the year where money can be invested to give some return to council. I think that has been sadly lacking for the last 7 years, and that's partly why this council is in this present position, because there is no investment in the future. I also look at 7.8, where the budget has been balanced by the use of a number of one-off funds. We really need to have in place where this doesn't happen. so that we can actually have a planned budget. So, yeah, I noted we will have a full debate at council on this, so I won't go any further there, but I'm really welcome the capital that hopefully will be invested to improve the lives of Shropshire residents.
Thank you, Roger. I've actually told the Chief Executive that I want to see the capital programme prioritised, and those items that will generate a sustainable revenue income for us to take a priority, because in 2020 we're going to lose a rate support grant, and all we'll have as income will be the council tax income and the business rate, whatever that means. The details are still pretty sketchy on that. So income is going to be an important issue for us to be looking at, and I totally agree with you, and I've already put in action that we shall be looking at what capital is available, and we can turn that capital into a sustainable revenue stream to help deliver the services.
One last point, Chairman, and I noticed that it's now a 3-year budget and not the 5-year budget, and years 4 and 5, I think that cliff has got even higher, and that black hole, that chasm has got even bigger. So it's important that it is addressed and we try and do something now.
I totally agree. Anybody else want to speak? Alan?
We have discussed this before, 3 weeks ago. You went off to London and had a jolly, no doubt, with Daniel Kaczynski, and came back smiling, and he'd saved the world, and was now going to be able to vote for his own Tory ideology once again, that you share, incidentally, going to party politics. Now it's all back to doom and gloom, because notwithstanding that change of our funding, we are right in the you-know-what, and it's a disaster all around, it seems. I'm not surprised you changed it from 5 years to 3 years, because if we continue the projection, this council won't exist in 5 years' time, and clearly what we're seeing in this document, that most of the services that this council currently provides for the residents of Shropshire will not exist in the 3 years' time at the end of this programme. And it's quite ironic that this thing is defined in various sections as a sustainable business model. How sustainable is it when most of it is all to do with decommissioning or closing? We don't know whether we can afford this, we don't know what's going to happen to that. This is likely to cease to exist. It is a real disaster area for this council, and hence for Shropshire residents. And I hope you also recognise that not only is this a financial report, but it's also a political report, because in our view it does clearly represent the end product of a Tory ideology that is now unencumbered by slight twitterings from my right hand side, and is blowing full steam ahead for the demise of the welfare state, the demise of public services, and the erosion of what people have worked for very many years. It is a catastrophe as these services are demolished. And I'm sure that as people increasingly see the details that lie within this document and the actual consequences of the way in which this country and this authority is being administered and governed, then there will be revolt, and it will be rejected wholesale. Don't go into details of this. We'll obviously have additional efforts. I will, and my group will, along with other people, try and mitigate the impact of these cuts as much as possible. But we will also want to educate the public about the extent of them, and, as I say, the dire consequences of what you are passing through today.
Alan, well, you would say that, wouldn't you, really? Can I remind you that our jolly, as you put it, was a trip on the train, about half an hour.
Oh, it wasn't it serious.
And a trip on the train back. But I will say that all our Conservative MPs in Shropshire were very, very supportive of what we were saying. They were there down arguing with the minister when we were talking. Daniel Kowinski has been a terrific help. And I think really it's down to the work that they did and that we did, and I have to say also the work that Cecilia did with the rural people down in London, that we got this second statement which gave us an extra £8.5 million. I've already told the Minister, Greg Clark, that isn't enough for Shropshire, and that we do need some more. And I think he actually saw some of the arguments we were using, and I'm hopeful that there's just some results from that. But you know, take politics out of it for a minute, and I don't think anybody around this table wants to provide over this council delivering less services than we think the community needs. I think anybody around this table, we wouldn't be here, did not believe in providing good public services for our communities. Unfortunately, during the years of the Labour administration, not only did they bankrupt the country, but they also moved resources from rural areas to urban areas. You can see that by looking at the amount per head that we get compared with the London Mets and the metropolitan authorities. This, if anything, was just a movement back to rural areas to make it a little bit more fair than it was. I think there's a considerable movement that needs to be made from the urban areas to the rural areas and to achieve a fairness of settlement. So I don't think we need to ask the Chancellor for more money for local government. He has his problems trying to solve the problems that Labour left us in the first place. But I do think a fair redistribution of that money that's available would get us to a great deal out of the problems that we've actually found ourselves in. So nobody's squeaky clean on this, Alan, politically. Roger.
Thank you, Chairman. I wasn't going down this avenue, but I think I need to. I think the MPs did have a real chance of helping Shropshire last week, and they deserted us. They have left us in a worse state. One-off funding for next year, £3.5 million for the year after, and then nothing. The actual financial settlement that has been made, and Shropshire is now reaping the benefit of it, is a disaster for Shropshire. And I really think that they bailed out. They could have been there and they could have forced some change to help rural areas like Shropshire, and they didn't. They just walked away and followed the party whip. Roger. Now that is a great pity to me. I wasn't going down there, but it's been brought in, but I think that statement needs to be made.
Roger, that's just totally untrue, I'm afraid. All our Tories MPs are down in government working very, very hard for Shropshire. They impressed upon the Minister the consequences of how they felt had they not achieved something for Shropshire. It's just not true to say that they did nothing and walked away. That's just not true. Anyway, I'm going to put the resolution to that we accept the recommendations in A to G. Will somebody move that?
Yeah.
Seconded. All those in favour? Right, that's being carried. Thank you. We now move on to the robustness of estimates and adequacy of reserves. The paper is before you. I wish I could say we got 10 times the amount of reserves, which could help us with our problem, but I can't. I think our reserves levels are prudent, and I think looking at what's happened in the past, that we need to hold on to them as long as we possibly can. Does anybody want to talk to that paper, or can I pass the recommendation? Somebody move it. Seconded. All those in favour, please show. That's carried. Thank you. No, we unfortunately have to include the press and public.